Okay, friends, so yesterday we discussed what an array was, and we did some practice with arrays. And we know that that is an arrangement of objects or numbers in equal rows and columns. Okay, equal rows and columns, right? Equal rows and columns. So this would be an example of an array, and this would be a 3 by 2 array. And this would also be an array, and that would be a 3 by 3 array. But this, my friends, it is not an array, okay, because it is not in equal rows and columns, and this is not an array because it is not in equal rows and columns. Okay, so when squares, dots, numbers, and other shapes form an arrangement of equal rows and columns, each can be called an array. Now, we also looked at our hundreds chart when we went back, and we talked about how the hundreds chart, in fact, can be considered an array. Okay, how many columns and how many rows does it have, right? We talked about the columns, the rows. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 1, 2, 3, 10 across, right? So it has 10 columns, and then it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. And an important feature for you to understand is that the 10 by 10 array decrease or increase by 10 depending on whether or not you're going up and down, right? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 190, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, and 10. Now, today we are going to generalize place value patterns in order to fill in missing parts of a 700s chart. Now, I'm going to show you right over here, and we're going to take a look at this very first sample right here. What if you were given this particular puzzle and you were asked to determine what the star is, but you're asked not to look at your hundreds chart in order to figure that out? Would you be able to figure out what the star is simply by knowing that the 34 is right there? Okay, could you think about the place value patterns? Well, knowing that 34 is here, we know that 33 is here, and we know that 35 is here, and we know that this would then be 45, and this would then be 55, so that means this would have to be 56. So we're going to make some generalizations with that. Again, you kind of have to sort of use your mental math or your mental math with understanding where numbers are placed to figure that out. Okay, again, what I did was I said this would be 33, 34, 35. We know that in the fives columns, it all ends in 5. So if this is 35, this has to be 45, this has to be 55, which means that the number directly next to 55 would be 56. So our star is equal to 56. Okay, now let's take this sample. Now we have 56, and we want to figure out what the star is over here. Okay, so obviously you're counting on 57, 58. So if this is 58, you know that the 8's column, this would make this 68, and then this would make it 78. So then this here would have to be 79. Okay, that star would represent the number 79. Now, you could have done it another way. You could have said 56, 57, 58, 59, 69, 79. That's another way to do it. Okay, you could have also said, okay, if this is 56, this is 66, 76, 77, 78, 79. There's a number of different ways you could figure it out without actually having to look at the chart. Okay, so if you did not have a hundreds chart in front of you and I asked you to tell me which column and row the numbers 89, 34, okay, 89, 34, 13, and 70 belong in, how would you be able to do that? Okay, well, in order for you to do that, you would again use the same strategy. Figure out perhaps where 90 is, figure out where 35 might be, find one of the multiples that's going to be easy to figure out where these numbers would land. Okay? Now, in our lesson, we are going to be looking at, okay, patterns to fill in number charts on the 100 puzzles. These are the puzzling puzzles, all right? And it says, Kathleen was about to do the puzzling puzzles below when she spilled some ink on them, making them even more challenging. Can you figure out, should be out, what goes in each box without looking at the 700s chart? And I will tell you that 700s chart is right there. Probably can see through it underneath of it. You can still see those numbers. But could you figure out what number would then go underneath of that? Okay, let's try number 1 together. Okay, let's see here. We're looking at the 713, and we need to know all of these other numbers. So if this is 713, right, we know it ends in 3, so 10 above that is going to be 703, and 10 below that is going to be 723. Now, if we know this is 713, what number comes before 713? 712. So this has to be 712. Now, if you know this ends in a 2, then you know this is 723, this would have to be 722, which would mean this number here would be 721. Okay, knowing this is 723, that would mean this number here is 724. So what would be underneath of 724? 734. Okay, 734. So we did this one together. Okay, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to work together to figure out numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But before we do that, I do want to take a quick look at the 700s chart because I want to talk a little bit about some of the patterns that you may notice. On this chart, you may notice that the patterns are the same as the hundreds chart. That is, if you move down one row, the value increases by 10. Okay, 701 plus 10 is 711, plus 10 is 721, 702 plus 10 is 712 plus 10 is 722. So each time you go down the chart, you are increasing by 10. Okay, and in retrospect, if you move up one row, the value decreases by 10. So if I wanted to go up one row from 727, it's going to take away 10 and give me 717. And if I go up again in that column, it's going to be 707. Now, moving to the right increases by 1, okay? And moving to the left decreases by 1, okay? Moving diagonally increases the value by 11. 701 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11, and so on and so forth. Okay, moving diagonally up one row and to the left decreases by 11. So if you're going from here to here, you're subtracting 11, subtracting 11, subtracting 11, subtracting 11, subtracting 11, subtracting 11, subtracting 11. And moving diagonally down left one row increases the value by 9. Moving diagonally down left one row and moving diagonally up one row decreases the value by 9. So those are just some of the patterns that I wanted to point out to you that are on the chart. Now, remember, you're trying not to look at the 700s chart, but when you're finished, you can certainly go back and check your answers, but see if you can use some of those patterns and how I demonstrated number 1 to work with a friend to figure out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we will come back together to review all of those in a few minutes. Okay? Have fun.